the challenge getting everyone back in from the coffee, but moving us into a panel discussion now on a topic of who owns cloud data. Now, what I would say, I was delighted with the finishing section earlier on Evan's Topia, in that we were talking significantly about trust, and particularly trust in technology and trust in people. I do suspect that's going to come up as part of our session. Quick introduction on myself. So David Wyndham Lewis, I'm the Health and Life Science Partner for Atos, so I lead our Health and Science business for UK and Ireland. Delighted that Atos is able to sponsor this event today and bring together this group for the discussions we're all going to have together. To introduce our panel, in the room with me, we have Rafael Almeida, so Director at SPMS, the Portuguese Ministry for Health Shared Services. Rafael's going to bring us a national perspective, and I think we'll particularly be touching, Rafael, on the balance that needs to be achieved between efficiency, resilience, and data sovereignty. Recognising that two of my panellists are online, but it looks like it's all working. So if I could start with Professor Rachel Dunscombe. So Rachel is CEO of the openEHR International, a former NHS Trust CIO, which is where I know her from, being a former NHS CIO myself, and actually someone, Rachel, who's had a significant major impact on my career. So as Rachel was the founding CEO of the NHS Digital Academy, of which I'm an alumni, so thank you very much for that as well, Rachel. And last, and certainly not least, Dr. Padma Roy, who will wave at the moment there. We can see at the top there, Padma. So Chief Operating Officer for the Data First AI Later organisation, a medical doctor and former chair of the Open Group Healthcare Forum. And between Rachel and Padma, we will get perspectives on the use of open data standards and how that can support interoperable platforms and avoid lock-in, our favourite topic, and from Padma a view, a more global lens on regions and how the ethical considerations come into cross-border collaboration. Just a couple of quick reflections on, I suppose, the significance of today's discussion as it relates to data held within cloud. I think we all recognise a rapid evolution of cloud technologies does offer a tremendous opportunity for health innovation, but it also brings quite complex dilemmas. So around data ownership, sovereignty, accountability, and looping back to our earlier point on the session from Irfan on trust, the resultant trust that needs to be built around ownership and data sovereignty. These aren't just technical or policy issues, though I must admit the technical issues around moving data into cloud is something I remember from my own experience implementing EPR and shared care record within the NHS. In a world where I think the future sustainability of health and social care systems, and of course the societal well-being that is underpinned by them, we've got to note that those require data sharing, both for primary and secondary use. And we need that data sharing to implement scaled, pervasive digital health innovation and transformation. So these are challenges that become quite profound considerations and therefore do actually require some attention from us as health professionals. The successful ideation, creation, adoption of digital health transformation does require the sharing of data and, of course, the multiple use of that data after its point of collection, which in turn requires that we build that trust between the clinicians and the patients. It's foundational to collaboration and engagement as part of care delivery and evolution. Those clinicians have to feel that they can trust the digital tools, that the data insights from them will enhance care without necessarily compromising any of our quite justified ethical standards. Meanwhile, the patients will need assurance from us that their sensitive health information is handled with absolute respect for privacy and security. I think we've also got to remember, though, and it's very easy to come at this from quite a negative perspective, and we heard Dan West and the team from the multinations talk here about optimism. We've got to remember that our patients want us to share data, both in the day-to-day operations, but also for research. And one of my own health startups, it's a predictive algorithmic monitoring tool for MS using Gator smart insole that goes in the shoe. And visiting Canada, where that company is based, and seeing that patient cohort, that is a group that is desperate to see innovation that will actually drive improvements in their lives. And they want their data to be used as part of improving care. This trust can only really be cultivated through a transparent dialogue that addresses the critical issues of privacy, data sovereignty, and I think not only the legislative truth of data ownership, but more importantly, what the citizens' perception is of data sovereignty and who owns it and who looks after it on their behalf. So, looking forward now to exploring these challenges and opportunities with Rafael, Rachel and Papa. I think what we'll move into initially is just some opening perspectives from each of our speakers. So actually, Rachel, could I come to you for initial views on the challenge area and opportunities?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that it's very clear that Atos owns the data. And they may not be the ones who are using the data, but they are the ones that, you know, have the moral right to understand the full transparency of how the data is being used. And for me, you know, there's a huge amount to go at here. We've talked about cloud. We've talked about how we need to use cloud, you know, certainly for things like AI and other uses. We need to train models in the cloud in many cases. We need infrastructure that can pop up and pop down. But one of the biggest things I've been in discussions with those around digital wallets and the WHO around how we provide transparency for the global transport of data for things like the International Patient Summary. I think this all comes down to building trust with our citizens about how we're doing that, who is looking after the data on their behalf. And I'd point to some very good examples like the Cheshire and Mersey Data Trust and some of the data trusts we're starting to set up in the UK that are working deeply with citizens to make sure that that is, you know, becoming a reality.
And I will read my presentation. Okay, first of all, let me thank the organizers on behalf of the Portuguese National Health System and the SPMS, and also by myself. Okay, in Portugal, our health system has more than 180,000 professionals that rely day on digital platforms. Over the last years, we have accelerated cloud adoption, but always with one guiding principle. There is no single perfect technology. Every choice has trade-offs, and the real challenge for us is integration and governance. Okay? So, we have 10 years of experience in cloud solutions, and in the last 6 years, we have adopted the FinOps methodology to evaluate the cost-effective use of the cloud. And for us, infrastructure as a service is not economic viable. It's to share for our system, while software as a service proved its value. Specialty in collaboration, mobility, and scaling citizen services. Efficiency means using the right tool for the right purpose, not chasing trends. Okay, we have talked much about EA in the morning. It's a trend, but it's here, and you have to know how to use it. And for use EA, there is a principle. If you have trash in your data, you will get trash, okay? And you need to have security in healthcare because there are lives in in play. So, cloud has given us elasticity and redundancies. Service such SNS 24, our national health helpline, and the Internet of Things telemonitoring benefit directly from the cloud, okay? But with my experience in 26 years of field, I work in small hospitals and big hospitals. I know, and we have seen that cloud is not always the answer for our systems, okay? Some systems for me have to remain on premises, and if it's possible in the same building. For example, the same building as the care is delivered. For example, intensive care units. It's most important that systems are in the same building, because if you have a catastrophic event, the system can work better. In cloud, in these years, we have learned that we should not depend on a single provider. We have started with Microsoft Azure, and now we go in this year we have going in Google Pilot, and for the next year we will start working with AWS. Okay, it's important that the solutions must be portable and cloud agnostic, and not locked into a proprietary technology. Why? Because health data is a national asset, and we must ensure control, compliance with standards, with European standards, and the ability to migrate workloads without major effort. This is sovereignty means in practice. We don't have to be dependent in the property technology. So in Portugal and in my direction, our goal for the next year is cloud will be a natural extension of our infrastructure campus, working with our data centers more integrated than today. Not a vision cloud versus on-prem, but cloud and on-prem transparently combined. Efficient, resilient, and sovereignty are not opposites, they are dimensions of the same system. To conclude, efficiency ensures sustainability, but not any cost. Resilience guarantees trust in the hospital and beyond. Sovereignty protects the future of our citizens' data. Portugal's path is to balance these three forces, not to choose one, but make them work together in a model that is sustainable, secure, and sovereign. My final thought, technology is not just black or white. The shades of grey often hold the most appropriate answers. Thank you.
And
Thanks.
Padma.
Rafael, I echo with your thought. Yeah, right. Technology is not always black and white. There are some gray areas that we need to identify. But when it comes to who owns the cloud, patients initially they need to own the data because that belongs to them. As India's ABDM enables through its tokenization, the Ayushman Bharat health account model keeping data on premise with patient consent, but the DPDP Act's lack of explicit ownership rights risks commercial misuse. As you rightly mentioned, that's what vendor lock-in should not be there anywhere. Unlike GDPR's stronger protections, governance needs a hybrid approach, like national regulators for sovereignty and global standards like FHIR for interoperability and openEHR work support this. That ensuring patients are not trapped by vendors That's what you beautifully mentioned, that you are changing your vendors from AWS, Google, and so on and so forth. So ensuring patients are not trapped by the vendors. Ethically, we must prioritize trust over profit. As 2025's $1.16 billion data monetization market is showing growing risk. And also, when it comes to various regions, GDPR has set the global benchmark on the data rights, consent, and accountability, and then also upcoming EHDS, that is European Health Data Space, is trying to make secondary use of the data for research and AI, as you already mentioned previously, and interoperable while protecting citizens' rights. When it comes to the US, the data is fragmented, but majorly driven by the HIPAA with stronger private sector dominance. As you are aware that cloud adoption is widespread in US, but governance is less centralized. That raises trust questions internationally. And India, when it comes to the India, I already mentioned Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, which is focusing on the federated health data models. And that has a strong emphasis on sovereignty, data to remain within the country, within the providers, but there is a token based access control for the innovation. So when I said, so this token based access control readily interacts with the openEHR and also the FHIR. So basically, when it comes to data, patients are the primary owners, and then the governments need to be like stewards, and the providers need to be guardians.
I think we might be muted. There we go. Perfect timing. So thank you, Padma. I'll lead us into a few questions, building on your opening perspectives. I'd quite like to explore, so all of you have made the point that the patient or the citizen should own their data, and absolutely agree. And I think your last point there is, as all of us, as the guardians of that trust, is a really good one. In terms then of the sort of governorship of that health data, do we think that the use of cloud infrastructure conflicts or supports that at the moment, and in what ways? And if I get a perspective from each of you. So perhaps, Rachel, if I could start with you on that.
Absolutely. So from my perspective, I don't think it has to conflict at all. Because the actual media on which you store something versus the logical governance and controls that you put around it, I think that those things can be, can be worked through. I'll give you some examples. We've talked a lot about sovereignty here, and within Europe, as an example, we've got AWS that is setting up sovereign cloud in Germany. And so cloud provision can be something that can have the governance and controls around it. I would say that perhaps things like trade agreements are more of an issue for some people and some countries in Europe in terms of buying cloud because of variability of price and so on. But I believe that systems can be well controlled and well marshaled to allow people to leverage the full benefits of cloud with the patient record. And, in these days of data sovereignty, we've heard already that we need to separate data from the application. It needs to be standardized and all of those things. The cloud can actually support that very nicely and ensure that, we've got high availability and other functions that we're going to need for things like the international patient summary and 24/7 available records globally for those that are, say, traveling. So for me, cloud is not in conflict.
Padma, could I get your perspective on the same? So the opportunities and any potential conflicts between the very distributed cloud and international approach for cloud hosting versus these goals of us as good governors of health data?
Yeah, so thanks, David, for asking that question. Where cloud, when the data is on the cloud, it is available everywhere throughout the globe, but there should be government boards, governance boards need to be established, like you or ACN can interconnect just like aviation safety bodies they do, and also the certification standards like ISO 27001 or INISA create a baseline for assurance like a safety stamp on the food products. And Rachel's just mentioned, I believe, but patient voice need to be considered when the data is actually going on to the cloud, and the patient records are not in one country, but they can travel. If I am in UK and I travel to US, my record travels with me. So that is the patient voice and the governance boards, the transparency. Patients must see who accessed their data. Like in India, ABDM has an audit trial, who has accessed, for what purpose it has accessed. So in the UK also, NHS involves patient representatives in data governance. So governance plays a major role when our data is on the cloud, and patients should be aware how their data is being used across the world. So I go for the transparency and the governance bodies and the certifications like ISO 27001 and then patient voice are the key roles in making the data though in the cloud, but accessed across the world.
And I think there's a good segue there, Padma, in terms of when we've referenced already public trust. So there is a need for us to assure the public that the practices we're putting in place do secure their data, but to my point earlier, do make their data useful for secondary use and research, because the public do want us to see the use of the data to progress models of care. And Rachel, you also referenced there, perhaps, in a world where trust between nations is potentially becoming a little bit frayed, and where the infrastructure is global, but accountability stays national, how we do that. Now, we've seen various programs across the NHS in the UK where trust has been lost in a data program, and it is delayed, if not cancelled, that program. Can I get your reflections on how we ensure and sustain trust in these solutions in terms of transparency, education, that side of things? And actually, if I could start with Padma on this one first.
Yeah. So again, coming back to there is when it comes to data sharing between the countries, right? As you rightly mentioned, there is a little bit of confusion, or there are some restrictions, because cloud makes data technically borderless from anywhere people can access, but the governance and accountability remain tied to the national laws. That is where various countries need to collaborate. This is the time for collaboration, because this mismatch can create friction. For example, Europe, through the GDPR and the European health data space, is trying to create harmonized rules for secondary use of data for research and also for the artificial intelligence. The US is fragmented, and already I mentioned the HIPAA and state laws. And cloud adoption, often driven by the private sector providers like the Epic or Cerner on AWS and Azure. And India, when it comes to the India, it has chosen a federated approach with the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, where health data stays local and tokens control the access. Africa and parts of Latin America are leapfrogging into the cloud first models, but risk dependency on big tech providers again. So, vendor lock in, again, we need to think of the vendor lock in. So, sometimes it may be like, looks like digital colonialism there. So we need to address this digital colonialism as well. These approaches reflect different balances between the sovereignty, innovation, and trust. So here we need to take the ethical choices in data sharing as countries. So what I believe is today European European data governance space, European health data space, and GDPR and HIPAA, even ABDM, all these various countries should come collaborate together. That is the need of the hour to solve these data sharing challenges.
Rachel, if I can come to you for a similar response.
Yes, having been involved in some of the debates around the WHO wallet work, and having been, sort of working with lawyers who advocate on behalf of citizens, this is something that is going to be, it's not as simple as just building on the sort of vaccines infrastructure that we had for our COVID certificates. There may be very good reason why you would want to share certain data when traveling in some countries, but not all of your data when traveling in others. There is an absolute need for transparency, but most of all, there is a need for an education and engagement with citizens. And they need to build trust in whatever authority is representing their data. Now, that may be their government, or it may be that we have data trusts where you can actually have your data managed by a data trust. But there will be a need for citizens to either accept the default sharing settings or to tailor their own settings. And that is going to take quite a degree of infrastructure to set up. And that's the international picture. Obviously, within our health systems, like, Wales or England or wherever else, we have, a default sharing setting. But to try and achieve this for the globe, is taking a lot of consideration and thought. And certainly I sit on the JIC, which is the standards body. So the top team from 12 different standards bodies. And we've been having increasing debate around strengthening the standards with ISO, to actually enable this to happen, because the governance around data is now becoming increasingly important. And we need to describe in standards globally to citizens what that will be and how it will operate.
I want to move us on to audience questions fairly promptly, but one last area to cover off with you is what each of you would see as the most promising areas for collaboration. So obviously Rachel with openEHR and the adoption of open standards with Federation. What are the horses we should be backing in terms of ensuring that the data is made to greatest use for our citizens? And go on, Rachel. Yes, sorry, you first, please.
For me, open standards are, key to this, and that is to make sure that the data is standardized. If we look at the sort of research from Peter Pronovost, between 20 and 30% of our healthcare system, its spend is wasteful. It's low value care, it's no value care, it's care that we deliver because we're not informed by the data. If we're going to deliver sustainable healthcare systems, which really, frankly, none in the Western world can continue with the uplift in spend year on year ongoing, we need to address that sort of efficiency piece around delivering the right care. And data is the key to that. And the cloud is, I think, an essential part of what will allow that data to be presented to any relevant provider at the point of care. So for me, the opportunity here really is to power the next generation health system with data as critical infrastructure, allowing, care outside the hospital as well as inside the hospital.
I agree with Rachel. You beautifully put that the open standards. So, for me, the promising areas for collaboration would be, if I have to pick three areas, I would really agree with Rachel and then say, yes, standards. The European health data space is showing us how these open standards like FHIR and the openEHR can prevent vendor lock-in. Without them, we risk locking the health data into proprietary silos where patients lose that portability. So no longer we can, if the data becomes interoperable. Standards are our insurance for sovereignty and choice. And the second promising area for the collaboration is federated learning. We all have seen during the COVID, hospitals in Europe ran AI models across multiple sites to predict that oxygen needs without ever moving patient data. So the data which stayed local, but the insights went global. This shows us that we can innovate at scale while respecting the privacy and sovereignty of a particular country or a privacy of the patient. And the third area for collaboration, I see the data sharing agreements. Like COVID, again, giving the COVID example where it has taught us through GIS AID, that global genomic sharing platform, that when we have trust contracts in place, collaboration saves lives. We have seen today morning the first session, the speaker has spoken about the empathy in healthcare. So trust is also very, very important. When we have to trust and we need to have the trust contracts in place, collaboration saves lives. We tracked variants and accelerated vaccines because countries choose to share that data. The same logic applies to the rare diseases and also AI validation, where no single country has enough data today. So, standards, federated models, open standards, federated models, and data sharing agreements are the three major blocks or areas of collaboration for me.
Brilliant, thank you, Padma. And I suppose that's a sort of closing summary there, and obviously all three of you have both presented the value and the opportunity that comes from the sharing that could be enabled by cloud, also addressing multiple aspects of the risk and the challenge. So in terms of Rachel and Padma, you've touched there on the potential for lock-in in terms of the data, the proprietary data structures that can lock us into a given EPR vendor, for example. And actually, Rafael, as part of your presentation, there was a key point in there, I think, about the nature of hybrid cloud, the fact that you're not only going with Azure or AWS or Google, you are deliberately going for a software as a service model across all of them to prevent a creation of a new type of lock-in over there, having gotten away from the issue of data lock-in.
Yes, and we are working to be easy, go to cloud and phase out from cloud.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's important. If you see the news last week, the principal responsible in French Microsoft, they can't prove that they have the governance of
the data actually will not go to the US, even though you've ticked the box that says keep it in the EU. Yes.
It's important that you know that. For my point of view, if we can work with primary data for primary use on-prem, it's more secure, and secondary data you can use cloud. In Portugal, our approach is when I talk about cloud is private cloud or public cloud. In Portugal, we are finished our data lake infrastructure with 3 petabytes of space for collecting data. We are started with healthcare data, but I have talked with my colleague that have the project. I only have the infrastructure, and I designed the infrastructure for the data lake. And I think it's very important because we all talk about health data, but we have to have more layers to have the relationship between healthcare data with environmental data, with industrial data, because one results for one region with healthcare data with the same same collections or the same standard in another region, if you analyze the industrial data and other things, the result will be different, okay? So we don't have to, we don't reliable in standards solutions for AI, because you have silos of geographical results that are very important.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, a very interesting point there, and perhaps unsurprisingly, given the topic of the day and the group we've got in the room, we've of course focused in very strongly in our discussion so far today on the health and the patient data, but actually, of course, we are increasingly seeing other aligned data sets need to come together with it. So the smart city data sets, for example, which actually start to become part of the delivery of care as well. Wonderful. Well, thank you all three for your discussions. I think I'd like to open to the room in terms of any questions from the audience for our panel. There's another one.
Good morning. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. My name is Tiago Taveira. I'm representing the sponsor MTG. This topic is very dear to me because my career started as a family physician, then moved to tech. And I've always wondered how much do we really protect the assets and this extremely valuable asset of data. And I see that the point really boils down to how do you preserve trust, and at some point, how can you technically demonstrate trust is there? So more than showing trust through compliance or showing trust through contract, how can you demonstrate through, at a cryptographical level, if you want, that trust has been preserved? So you don't need to really show, in the end, you don't really need to trust because you have the proof that nothing happened. And I've been reflecting upon this concept, going not only through, we need not to trust our vendors, but we should also not trust ourselves as professionals that manage these elements, because they are so sensitive. And as this amount of data grows, we also need, as professionals inside institutions, to say, how can we demonstrate we have done nothing wrong? And there are 2 or 3 aspects I would like to share. I think they may contribute in the direction of what we believe in. One is having this redundancy of the providers, for sure, but also looking at, we nowadays have very mature open source technologies on Apache Foundation and on Cloud Native Foundation, and there are very strong projects that have already graduated and that they can be deployed whether on cloud or on-prem. So building an infrastructure that can be redundant across whatever providers, whatever local or physical or cloud infrastructure, it's possible. And if we look at other industries, for example, in telecommunications, that is very, very, very well done for a long time. And the other point I think we can add upon the transparency of the code is also thinking about, as vendors that provide solutions, is it that hard that we provide visibility on our code? So do we really need to protect your code from your client, or can you trust your client that they can see your code, potentially not changing it, but at least see it and build your code on their infrastructure? So they don't need to trust that what you're putting on the table is a black box. It's actually white, just like what you do with the open source, but maybe not pushing too hard to make everybody open source publicly. And lastly, taking from the defense, an approach that I see still very early stages in healthcare, which is taking client-side encryption on the full cycle. So we worry about a lot, and correctly in my vision, that what happens on the other side when we provide, when we buy a service or a managed service. But if the service works with the keys that I only have, I can be sure that on the other side nothing's going to happen. And there is very interesting work happening in defense, doing end-to-end client-side encryption. and backing that with hardware security modules, so that at the end of the day, if you treat healthcare data and sovereignty problem the same way defense is being treated, you can also port in all those learnings into healthcare and really protect data in cloud and pretty much work with whoever you want, but without sacrificing trust. Of course, it is at the cost of additional technical complexity, but I think that could really pay off if that can be built. Because at the end of the day, if we move more and more into having genomic data next to the data sets of EHR data, I think at some point this data will be really an asset of ambition, not just for training AI, but for developing warfare. And if we do not secure that properly, I think that there may be ways to develop warfare based on exploiting data that goes at the genomic level. And so I really think it's a matter of really stressing importance that we look at healthcare data more and more as a sovereign and a national security matter, even more than privacy, which I really think it must be done, but it's really more a sovereignty. And the more and more appetite large language models are going to have for data, the more I think there will be an incentive to risk compliance if you don't have it secured at the technical level.
Yep. And thank you. A couple of really interesting points in there. I'll take Chair's prerogative, I suppose, to address the latter one in terms of that data sovereignty. And absolutely, of course, what we've tried over years now, 25 years in the NHS for myself and all the grey hair and scars that comes with it, to separate the data from the application. And I think what you're referencing there is a necessity to come up with a means of separating the data from its hosted environment as well. So secure that with your own keys, whatever the technical route we go to for that. So absolutely, and there's a fundamental underlying interesting point there on there's a different level of assurance, isn't there? What do we as the experts in this space need to assure us that we've done the right things to secure the data? Your point on the use of our citizens' genomic data as a weapon in the future is a fascinating point. I think even more fundamental than that now, without the availability of this data, our minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour, day-to-day ability to operate our health services diminishes. So if we were a foreign actor attacking the UK, actually, yes, you could just shut down our hospitals, take out all our EPRs. It's entirely plausible. So there's there's all sorts of attack vectors that the UK and other nations need to be aware of with this. I think the other point I'd just like to raise out of that and take to our panelists is there's something here, and again, it relates to us all in this room as the experts in this space. What can we understand and what can we communicate to the citizen? Because the citizen's not going to understand any of that. They're not going to understand why that does or doesn't make things safe. So actually, if I can go to Padma and then Rachel, because I know from both of your perspectives now, you've worked on previously, is translating that to the citizen. So actually, we're not expecting them to understand the details of end-to-end encryption, but actually they can put the trust in us and experts that we have thought of that. So Rachel, could I start with you?
Yes, and I don't think the citizen is monolithic. It is a spectrum. For instance, I work with Citizens Use AI in the US, and they would want to see all of their audit trail and exactly how it's encrypted, right the way through to some citizens that just want to know that somebody's assured it that they trust, right? So it's not, citizens have a set of needs. One example that comes up from what we've just been talking about there for me is actually the way in which the VA in the American military actually secures trauma data for their patients. I've actually worked with a company that does that. They also secure all of the data, that company, in the New York Stock Exchange and military data as well. We need to get new tool sets into healthcare over time to make sure that we're both secure, as we talked about, but also so that we can provide to those citizens that need to see exactly what has happened with that data, how it's been secured. And I think we're going to end up developing sort of kite marks or seals that basically say this has been assured and audited, and there will be independent assurance of how that data has been marshaled. So that's kind of my view of how it will move out. But citizens, I am very much aware, are not one group of needs or one group of interest.
Padma, if I can just couch it in terms, I know you've got a particular interest in the ethics of cross-border sharing. So actually, in that world where the availability of data across borders could be a threat to nations, how do we balance that with the ethics of cross-border sharing to support improvement of patient care?
Yeah, so we need to basically make it available. The data should be transparent, and the citizens, I agree with Rachel as well, citizens must know where their data resides and who are accessing it. And the shared governance boards like multi-country should come forward and have a shared governance boards need to be established for cross-border data projects, and certification and assurance frameworks in line with the ISO or any such standards, and involve patients and civil society in governance. Designing the governance, not just policymakers and vendors. Anyhow, policymakers and vendors need to be there, but definitely patients need to be there, because patients' knowledge is very much important for how to build the trust. When patients know where their data is residing and who or how it is being accessed, it creates a visibility and control. For example, we all access our bank online banking, and we know how much money we have drawn or where our money is going, so that transparency is there. So similarly, we need to have the patient's trust bring into the system, so this reduces the fear of hidden exploitation. If patients can see audit trails, who has accessed their data, when it is being accessed, and why they have access, they are more likely to share data for research and innovation. It's like transparency doesn't just protect patients, it empowers them, and informed patients are more willing to share data responsibly. That fuels our innovation.
All three. I'm sure Rafael and others will be happy to take questions in the break afterwards, but I'm sure Paul's going to start waving me down if I don't stop us here. So please all join me in thanking our three panellists, so Padma, Rachel and Rafael. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to the conversations of the rest of the day.
Everybody is looking for better healthcare solutions. What if AI could be the answer? AI in healthcare isn't just a buzzword. It's revolutionizing patient care. With AI, we can achieve more accurate diagnoses and personalized treatments tailored specifically to each patient. AI systems analyze vast amounts of medical data at lightning speed, identifying patterns that might be missed by human eyes. This means early detection of diseases, fewer errors, and more effective treatments. But the magic doesn't stop there. AI helps streamline administrative tasks, giving healthcare professionals more time to focus on what they do best, caring for patients. The result? Enhanced patient outcomes and improved quality of life. So whether it's predicting patient needs or making real-time decisions, AI is transforming healthcare, one patient at a time. Embrace the future with AI-driven healthcare solutions. Because better health outcomes start with better technology. Ready to take the leap? AI in healthcare, better diagnoses and treatments, making healthcare smarter, one innovation at a time.
Venture into the frontiers of healthcare data innovation with the Health Data Forum. Welcome to the Health Data Forum's YouTube channel, your gateway to thought-provoking conversations, cutting-edge insights, and groundbreaking advancements in healthcare data. Join us as we explore the transformative power of data to revolutionize healthcare delivery, patient care, and societal well-being. Embark on a journey of discovery. Delve into healthcare data through our informative videos, featuring leading experts, thought leaders, and innovators. Discover how our global movement, Data First, AI Later, is building a strong foundation for ethical and impactful healthcare solutions. Experience the collaborative spirit. Be a part of our vibrant community of health data enthusiasts, where ideas converge, partnerships flourish, and innovation takes center stage. Participate in discussions, share your perspectives, and join us in shaping the future of data-driven healthcare. Stay informed about the latest developments in healthcare data through our comprehensive video library. Catch up on insightful interviews, thought-provoking presentations, and engaging discussions about the role of data as the backbone of healthcare transformation. Join us in shaping the future of healthcare. Let's harness the power of data to transform healthcare for the better. Subscribe to our channel today and become part of the Health Data Forum's mission and our Data First, AI Later initiative to make healthcare data work for everyone.